unleashing the power of composability. It says AEM versus Sanity here, but I don't think we are as adversarial a team here right now. We're going to talk about the whys and the hows of moving from AEM to Sanity. And let's just start with introducing ourselves. Let's like briefly touch on our experience with AEM and what we're doing right now. So let's start with you, Marcus.
Hello, I'm Marcus. I'm part of the solution engineering team here at Sanity, and I've joined Sanity 2 years ago. And before that, I was at Unilever for 14 years, and I was the platform owner of the AEM platform Unilever has built to host all the marketing sites. And yeah, it was a very, very big program, which I'm really proud of, and where we managed a lot of things. But we also had some issues, some challenges, and we can talk about this a little bit more. But yeah, to start with, I just wanted to say one controversial thing: you can do everything with AEM, but there are some downsides. So we can talk about this in a minute.
Perfect. Scott.
Hey, hello there. My name is Scott Gentz. I'm part of the customer success team here at Sanity. I've been with Sanity since the beginning of the year, and prior to that, I spent 23 years at AT&T in various technology roles. The last of which I spent a lot of time with our digital omni-channel strategic platform teams, and I worked with a number of platforms, including AEM and content management systems as part of our UI ecosystem, and yeah, have a lot of experience with transformation across the entire stack and good experiences there, and glad to be here today.
And you, William?
I'm William Correa, SVP of Technology at Wrangle. I have been doing 20 years now software development, especially to the CMS and asset management space. Have worked in more than 500 at-scale migrations from and to AEM. And I'm very excited to be chatting and sharing a little bit today.
Amazing. And Dante?
Yeah, so my name is Dante Kelly. I'm the senior front-end developer here at HireDevs, and I'm in charge of the migration of AEM websites. Pretty simple.
Amazing. And I'm the CTO of Sanity.io, and I never actually seen AEM, the insides of AEM in my life. So we're lucky to have Marcus and Scott, such kind of OGs of the AEM, using AEM in the in the enterprise. I used to run a small specialist agency, design and engineering. We built infrastructure and tools for marketing and media, and we designed kind of these remarkable experiences. And we built Sanity because it felt like we kept building the same tools over and over again, in a sense. So Sanity exists because we wanted to solve these things properly for everyone once and for all. So that's kind of where I'm at here. So I'm learning about AEM today, and I would love to start hearing a little bit about the good parts, like the honeymoon phase. Like when you pick AEM, what are the good parts? What are you looking for? Let's start with you again, Marcus.
Thank you, Simon. Thinking back at 2014, this is when the journey started for me to be engaged with AEM. At that time, I was running the RFP for transitioning the old technology platform we had at Unilever to host the marketing side. And this was part of a bigger transformation journey. So the RFP ended with Adobe winning because Adobe had the most end-to-end perspective on digital marketing. So it was obviously able to handle the content for the marketing pages and build the marketing sites, but it was also introducing new concepts at that time, really new things like personalization, campaigns, A/B testing, and all these things. So it was a decision which was made at the C-suite, but I think rightly so, because it was really an embarkment into a wider transformation journey. And I think going back to your question, the honeymoon days were really exciting. We had an amazing team working together with an implementation partner, with Adobe, very keen to make this a successful implementation. I was in charge at that time to really set the direction, and our vision was to really design and create a platform. I always called it Squarespace for enterprises. So we wanted to create a platform which would allow marketing teams to very easily combine different elements which we would centrally create, have a choice of 2-3 headers. And so to make a composable system where the marketing teams could be in charge of their own destiny and create the marketing tools they needed.
Amazing. So is that so that's that kind of Squarespace for the enterprise, like self-serve but still compliant in a sense. Is that fair to say?
That's right, and it's a difficult challenge to solve, and we really thought about this and had like different tiers of flexibility for different brands. So we had like a bronze, silver, gold level. The bronze brands were only allowed to change the colors in the CSS file, and then the gold brands would be allowed to change everything and to really create new components and have a deeper influence into the components the central platform would build.
Exactly. How many brands is about in Unilever?
It's an interesting question, and you get different answers depending on who you ask. Roughly, we always talked about 800 sites, but every site is a localization of a market, right? So
it's locale and brand.
So you might have Dove.com and Dove.us would be one side, Dove France would be another side. So roughly
800 channels in a sense.
Yes.
Amazing. So let's move over to you, Scott. So you also have like with AT&T a huge challenge, I guess.
Yeah, I think similar to what Marcus has kind of expressed. Initially the draw for us to moving to AEM, and it was kind of a look at the larger, broader Adobe stack, right? We've been using a lot of their design and creative tools, and we wanted a real quick approach to time to market approach to getting, especially in front of our marketing customers, being able to get a kind of a suite of tools that are not just our technical front end and other users can use, but also our non-technical. So a suite of tools that allowed us to quickly campaign, run analytics, A/B testing. And at that time, which I think was around 2010, we were moving off of a lot of other legacy CMS platforms. We were also starting to transform on our front ends, moving from JSPs to modern JavaScript framework. So we kind of saw the writing on the wall that these kind of platforms worked well with that transformation, and it really just allowed us to get up, quickly and get content in front of our customers across a really large, enterprise space. So that was kind of our, I guess, our introduction to AEM.
And at this point in time, like we say monolith as if it's a bad thing, but at this point, it means that it's integrated. Like you have one vendor for all of your stuff, right? That's also a benefit at this point, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, because if you think about it, at that time, NUI is always the slowest to catch up to this decomposition, move towards more composability, right? We were only at that time beginning to look at decomposing our services and backends to microservices. We hadn't even really reached a point where technology and mature enough to do micro front end. So there was a lot of convenience in out of the box integration with these different components, right? I think where we ran into challenges, like most large customers, where you start to integrate with what we're doing in-house, right? All the different flavors of internal customers, marketing, e-commerce, retail, agent, like all these different channels are interacting with content. So when you start to integrate, that's where you run into these challenges with these out of the box solutions, right? You don't have
that's a good point. So
exactly.
So even though the thing comes as a fully complete the thing, you still have to do a lot of integrations. You're still composing.
Quite a bit of integration, right?
Exactly. So. William is nodding here. But let's keep it. Let's focus on some of the good parts. Like, what do you see when like the good parts in the work, the project that you've been involved with, William?
I think it comes to the complexity of the environment that you're dealing with, and AEM is pretty good to enabling multi-functions and giving capabilities to any platform in terms of content, in terms of analytics, in terms of personalization even, and that's it's an easy, compelling moment when we are talking about how to address a complex ecosystems of websites, especially when you need an on-premise solution at that years ago, and that was like major point for decision makers to adopt AEM. And I think when it comes to support and a broad network of agencies that can implement AEM, that was handful, especially for sites that were global with multi-culture involved and whatnot. So I think that's another benefit of the platform as a whole, not only the technology solution.
That's very interesting. Is this something, Dante, like you usually come in when the migration starts, right? Like, do you have
Exactly.
a sense of the good parts from that perspective, or like we will cover more of the migration later, but
Well, I can see the beauty and the accounting of it because you're already using Photoshop, you're already using Illustrator, you're already using Premiere, and so you have a great relationship with these guys in the beginning. And to go on and continue and have all of your content still in the cloud and being able to utilize it whenever you want can be an amazing thing. But yeah, I typically come in on the back end when that honeymoon phase is pretty much over. So I didn't get to see too much of the beauty inside of it.
But I think that's a great point. Like that whole just having one relationship and having all the tools kind of together. That's of course incredibly convenient. So let's talk about some of the cracks. Why are people considering making a move? And let's turn the order around. Let's start with you, William.
Yeah, from my experience, there are plenty of motivations depending on the size of the organization. Like it starts with every upgrade. Sometimes it seems like a re-architecture. So every time that you need to upgrade AEM to a new version, that is kind of a new project starting from the beginning, or at least similar to that. It's also when it comes to the cost benefit, sometimes you're paying for a whole platform that you don't need. And that's a big factor, especially for special projects or even for sites that do not need the whole set of features that AEM it's providing to you. And last but not least, I think the fact that if you have a multi-channel structure on your organization where you need to broadcast content and assets in different shapes, formats to different audiences, that is an extra step that is over engineered, I would say sometimes, or even not possible because of the data model that we have with AEM. Or at least will require a lot of customizations, integrations, and whatnot. And last but not least, just because I'm a developer, I must say that when you ask developers what they prefer to work with, they would always say like modern technologies, modern languages, and whatnot. And AEM is still a little bit on the legacy era of software development in terms of paradigms, language, and infrastructure. So it's also a compelling moment to motivate teams to work on modern stack. So AEM definitely lacks a little bit.
Is it a problem in itself also that AEM is like even though like even if you love Java, it's a separate technology from most of the web front-end technologies that people are using? Like a separate competency for...
It's a second competency and also requires you to have like the tool set that you have on AEM requires you to work with different platform structures to have a simple page in place. Sometimes you have configuration that is done in HTML. You have blocks that are built with HTML. And then last but not least, you have data sets that are coming from integrations and from AEM. So like it makes the ecosystem to have sometimes a simple landing page or a simple series of pages online a lot of effort. And then, any developer that you ask gonna say, yes, the benefits that I see here, they are much more cumbersome compared to what I could do by myself writing this on a single instance. But exactly. It's not necessarily only a bad factor. It's just a point of strategy, especially for marketing teams that want to move fast and be able to evolve with the market at the pace of their ambitions. So it's a very interesting point when you have that flexibility that the headless can bring to the table.
So let's talk about marketing teams that want to move very fast. Marcus, marketers who want to move fast. And
before I go there, I just wanted to add one point to what William was saying. I think the first deception, or when the honeymoon ended, it was really that moment where you realize all these different tools in the suite they're not really connected, right? So these have all been acquisitions Adobe have done over the years, and they are all getting unified in terms of the UI, but in terms of paradigms and in terms of how things are being set up, it's all very much hand-coded, and you need to stitch it back together every time you create something bigger. So I just wanted to add that because this was really one realization which was quite striking at that time. To your question, I can only speak to the journey we went through. So we obviously had that vision to create components big enough to really capture marketing needs, but have them flexible enough so that different brands could utilize them in the right way. And that was challenging because you don't know what marketeers have in their minds, and they always come up with new things. So it was very difficult to keep up with the requests from brands to really provide the components they would need. So the time to market for a component, because you need, as William was saying, you need experts for coding these components. They are deeply integrated into AEM itself, but also into other tools. If you think about a product detail page and you want to have product details being sourced from a product management system, these are big challenges, integrations to other systems. And so, yeah, I think depending on who you ask, I think from a technology perspective, we were very glad to have everything under control. It was one platform. But I think the marketing teams wanted more flexibility. They wanted faster innovation in terms of new components. And we've been trying to keep the set of components fairly low and manageable. But the requests from marketing and brands has been growing. And this kind of pushed the platform to become a very big set of components which we didn't anticipate at the beginning, which again then require more maintenance and more development effort.
So that also part of that is also the cost of your integrated solution. Like the benefit turns into like a management nightmare, if in a sense. Like, is that fair to say?
I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
How about you, Scott? Well, when did the cracks appear? What did you?
Yeah, very similar points from both William and Marcus. I think for AT&T, especially once we started bringing in modern UI frameworks, we saw that a lot of the out-of-the-box capabilities that we received from these platforms like Adobe were being replaced by best-of-breed solutions, and also even in-house, right? A lot of the things that were proprietary 10 years ago are now open source and free, right? And points about, I think, total cost of ownership too are very, true in this case as well. Like I read a statistic last year, a survey that Gartner put out and on MarTech and marketing, and they're using 42% of their MarTech stack compared to 54% even 2 years previous to that. So a lot of these products in this larger stack are now being replaced and or even collapsed. A lot of companies like AT&T want to take back and take control of their data, including content, and they're using it in ways that these out-of-the-box providers just can't keep up with. There's a desire to have more control over how that content gets structured, privacy, data security. All those things now are pushing companies to bring their data back in. And then I just think, especially with AT&T, there was this really push for performance and customer experience, a real high focus, especially in the last 5 years. And there was just a proliferation of not just, Adobe. I'm not trying to pick on Adobe here, but of many of these legacy providers that have very heavy client browser frameworks, right? So there was a performance cost of having all these libraries running in the browser. And, that became one of our first focuses. How do we reduce third-party libraries? How do we move things to the server side? And that's when, we saw the cracks with a lot of these legacy platforms where they just had not invested in server side. They had not even invested in cloud, right? We're kind of late moving to cloud. So, a company like AT&T has the resources to accelerate and build on it. So a lot of the things that we no longer had were now readily available. And all the other points that they also brought up, I think are relevant, especially with the marketing team, MarTech stack. It's just the ability to quickly do things that now you can do in-house. You can do personalization. You can do machine learning algorithms. You can use your own models, right? So all of those things drove us to kind of look at how we wanted to further decouple from these types of stacks and bring in best of breed or bring it in-house, right? And now we had decomposed the front end, so we were in a place where we could do that, where it wouldn't be as painful or costly.
Yeah, because you already had like a composable kind of a cobbled together solution using AEM at that point.
Right. We had actually pivoted from headful to a hybrid. Like even before Adobe offered it, we started using them headlessly because we saw the handwriting on the wall as part of that performance optimization. And then they too realized it and started offering headless. But it's more than just headless. I think we've talked about this, right? It's more than not just putting your your solution behind a bunch of APIs, right? You have to have control over your data schemas. You have to be able to customize and tailor those. And I think it's hard to be that one-size-fits-all solution for customers. So having a platform that has that flexibility to be able to compose content and structure content in the way that you want to use it is a very powerful, mechanism.
Mm. William, you're nodding here. I would love to hear your take on that kind of like let's say the content model or data model in AEM versus a more kind of fully decomposed kind of headless system. What are the benefits of moving away in a sense, or what are the limitations technically?
I think it comes to flexibility. When you have a data model that is prepared to to attend the business needs and not necessarily attending the page needs, basically, you are giving the chances to teams to evolve much faster, whatever the strategy they have in place, and having content models that are built to be composable, allowing you to construct the experience that you need on top of having that on brand all the time is a benefit that you can have compared to the old models, right? And then also, like when you're talking about multi-channels, again, the chances that you have to have a content model that allows you to have a single source of truth for the content that compliance legal can review once approved and pushed to all your channels, that's also very compelling. And the content model that is thought and designed to support that type of structure is really, I would say, even that is a strategic piece of marketing that must be there, sometimes even influencing the strategy of the business. It's giving another level of velocity and even power to the tools that you have at your disposal to compose experiences much faster. And we all know that at the age that we are right now, experience is what rules, is what determines the success, sometimes the failure of a product. So giving it's a little bit on the architectural side, because at the end of the day, composing those experiences is very important. And the data model that you have, let's say on AEM, is much more traditional in that sense. It was built and was taught to be the traditional web 1.0, 2.0 with simple pages, or maybe pages that were much more intended to the traditional consuming side. And in that sense, content has evolved, and content is everywhere today. So platforms that think like Sanity, that allows you to have multi-channel strategies, literally are the differentiation point here.
Yeah, I talked to one customer today who used to, in this kind of one page, one data object model, used to have to update 25 places when they did like a new product release, whereas with Sanity they did one, and that kind of was reflected across. So even like even when you have one CMS, like a single source of truth can be broken up if you have the wrong kind of data model. Dante, do you have any perspectives on this? Like, you've seen deeply into the data model of AEM, I know.
Yeah, we actually seen an increase in efficiency and productivity when we moved over to Sanity, and especially with the integrations that you can go ahead and utilize within Sanity and the amount of customization you can have. We just seen an immense increase in productivity with the users, and we were able to segment out who has access to what component in particular. So you can even have managers, and you can have admins, and you can have different people responsible for different things in the product line. So it made things extremely simple to go ahead and utilize. And we also seen in jumping over from the whole AEM model over to Sanity, we were able to move everyone over to TypeScript and things like Storyboard, which greatly improved the accessibility of the components. And we also removed a lot of bugs because we're able to now do great unit testing, and we're able to have the managers and the shareholders and stakeholders and everyone basically be able to look at all the components immediately and see what's wrong, see what's right, and being able to fix things on the fly. So yeah, we've seen a lot of great stuff.
So let's stay before we move. So I'm guessing the next kind of stage is like planning to move over. But anyone who want to call out any other kind of needs or benefits or the things you pursue as you consider the move before we go there?
Just a thought on the performance, because I just wanted to make very clear, you can have a fast website with AEM, right? But it's a lot of effort because you need to take a lot of things out. So it's not fast by default. And this is where, when we've been experimenting with the more Jamstack approach at that time, it's what the term was. Now we're talking about composable. But it's just deploying a static site to a CDN where you have a good starting point for the performance, and you have much more control about what is kind of degrading that performance. And yeah, I think this was a key challenge we faced, is to really get a grip on the performance issues we've been seeing, which have an impact on SEO and other areas as well. So that was like an uphill battle for a long time.
That goes a bit to your point, Scott, about best of breed. Like instead of hacking, you can hack anything into anything in a sense if you spend enough time. But yes, with a composable solution, you can pick the solutions that fit the task in a sense, right?
Right, and kind of adding to what William said about omni-channel, like we brought in different, at the time AT&T brought in different tech stacks on even web tech stacks for retail and agent, where we were bringing in Salesforce and using their Lightning UI component library. So having the flexibility to use multiple design systems, multiple UI libraries, and not be tightly coupled to any one platform there, and being able to reuse content and API, that's a pretty powerful. That allowed us to quickly get into channels quickly that we would have gone back into the UI layer, refactored, and with Adobe being more web centric, we just didn't have that capability at the time, right? And we especially saw that in native too, where the tooling there was just lax, especially around rich text editing. There just wasn't a very good solution for the teams to go in and manipulate content for non-web channels.
Exactly. So we have established. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's also tied to the total cost of ownership. Like as Marcus was saying, like if you can make AEM fast, sure, but you have to have a cache layer, you have to have a cache strategy. If you have an e-commerce, let's say a marketing website that is more static, then the cache layer is a completely new beast that you have to tackle, and so on. So I think total cost of ownership in that case is also higher when you think in that way. And the other thing, like especially for big brands like Unilever, where they have like a series of multi-brands, it's very common for them to have like other agencies working in isolation for specific products sometimes. And when you have a headless solution, you're basically giving them the ability to work and evolve and have those agencies work in separation. And at the same time, you have a way especially when you have the proper modeling in place, to allow to deploy on brand and compliant by design. So I think those are other benefits that sometimes are hidden behind of this discussion, but total cost of ownership and cost of opportunity is always there as well.
Cost opportunities, and that's a good point. Like the channels that you cannot reach, or the technologies that you cannot use because you're tied into this very tight ecosystem. So so let's say like we're getting to this point, like as a product owner or a CIO, or like I see this world on the other side, best of breed technologies, more efficient editorial workflows, access to all of these channels more easier than a single source of truth, and structured content and the technical independence. So I decide I want to move, but it's scary. It feels expensive and risky. Let's talk.
Risking is very important. And one of the approaches that for those type of migrations, regardless of the scale of the migration, at least from our experience here at Wrangle, like we can always take that on a iterative, incremental approach, meaning that we can see value of the new platform as early as on the first 2 sprints of the project. And that's something that helps us to move from a legacy platform to a modern platform in a more sustainable way. It's much easier to get stakeholder alignment and make sure that everyone is on board on that project and investing on the proper and right way. And one of the things that I love about Headless is that it's a perfect ecosystem. Actually, it's an incentivized ecosystem to keep multiple platforms running at the same time, enabling that migration in a smooth way. And I think that's one of the benefits, especially with the headless aspect, allowing us to compose a solution even for the migration phase of the project. And even when you're talking about big bang migrations, or turnkey migrations, is still like something that is feasible and much more testable, and in a way that we can de-risk as well as we go with the migration, and making sure that SEO is not harmed, or even the compliance and legal aspects of the content that you're publishing. I think those are like the main points. We can maybe diving more.
Yeah. We will for sure do that. But like, so in a sense, you're mitigating risk by keeping both solutions up at the same time and kind of gradually shifting over responsibilities to the new platform. Always, I'm guessing, being able to then roll back or like shift back to if you realize something has been a little bit off until you figure it out.
Yeah, that's one of the approach. On a recent project, like we had a situation where the client was with a legacy platform, and the marketing team was blocked to put landing pages together, right? And at the same time, the IT was taking care of a huge migration of platforms, and everything was kind of blocked by everyone. So like approaching this on an iterative way, we brought the headless CMS into the space. We enabled the landing pages to be deployed much earlier in the process, and that was enough to even justify an extra investment on the migration project of the rest of the application. So I think those scenarios where the composability enables you to move faster and get the results faster, it's one of the things that I think only headless can bring to you in this shape and form of agility and benefits that you're talking about.
I see. So let's move over to you, Scott. Like, give us a sense of the scale of like when you started thinking about the move. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. So at first, I think, let's see, probably around 4 years ago is where we really started to look at moving off of not just AEM, but we had including different versions. We had probably 10 legacy CMS platforms across all of consumer small business, and that includes digital, retail, and call center. So I mean, a really large footprint, like 87 application areas, 256 applications. I mean, just a crazy amount of breadth of content. So we've really struggled, like many big, large transformations, like being able to clean off of the old systems and get fully shut them down, especially on the legacy. So we really wanted to make sure that we did this with this transformation effort. So we took like a two-phase approach to it. We looked at doing what we call like an as-is migration. So for legacy applications where we have front ends, we don't have time to go back and refactor. We don't have that. They're not really operating fully headless on the front ends. We basically lifted and shifted the current feeds directly into Sanity. So just getting it basically off of the old platforms with minimal impact to the front ends, little work there. And then, not the maybe best authoring experience, but at least something where they can get in, get started, and we can come back and clean it up. And then where we had already done a lot of heavy investment on our at.com and our other big sites, our e-commerce sites, where we already have these front-end updated front-end tech stacks running headless, right? That's where we looked at doing more of that transformation. So we went in and really looked at how do we clean up this content? How do we pull reuse out? Where are we not reusing content across channels? And we really focused on putting new models in place, converting and collapsing and reducing that content cruft that we had accumulated. So that's where we were able to do more of the transformation to feature state, focus more on better editorial experiences, and we were able to bring in other tools that we wanted to put in place to help with things like experimentation and what have you. So a combination of those two things allowed us to make this really large scale transformation effort. And it was especially very crucial because we have literally in AT.com, there's thousands and thousands of unique microsites and pages, and they're being generated dynamically. So we have these really intelligent SPA/PWA type apps that generate these front-end experiences. So because of having that technology in there, we were able to go in even at a route-based approach, and we could toggle one and run side by side, run AEM and then run Sanity and do visual testing on those things, do all the back end testing on it, and then gradually run traffic through it. So we're able to get to a very pinpoint approach to being able to migrate and do it in a way that it's safe and allows us to fall back if we had to. So a lot of that had to do with just a lot of that prep that I just discussed, being able to decouple, looking at our front ends, how do they interact with not just content but data and other systems, and yeah.
So it's a kind of a similar approach in a sense. So for your first stage doing the as-is migration in parallel, you run the both systems at the same time, but you actually kind of do a mirror in a sense, like as you clean up stuff, but you mirror things over. So you're not getting the full benefit at that point of Sanity or like the composable architecture, but at least you get out of the AEM kind of world,
Right.
and you can shut down the contract. I guess that's also a benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
you do the full refactor and reap the benefit of the headless.
Right. Yeah, I think too, there's this hidden cost to staying on the legacy too, because of all the infrastructure. Like we had over 200 different infrastructures across the enterprise that were supporting the legacy AEM stacks that were not even on. They were wrapper containers that ran natively, but they're on legacy stacks that we couldn't even move to cloud. So there's a high cost of maintaining all those infrastructures. So it was important for us to get those off, even if we were, maybe taking a bit of a hit with working with these larger blob-like schemas. At least we could get the infrastructure cost savings and then come back later and clean it up. And we're actually able to reuse that cost savings to go justify doing that work.
I think it's kind of interesting that a company the size of a nation state, I mean, you also then of course have costs scaled up to a similar level, so it matters even at that size of company.
Yes.
Yeah. Data. This is kind of your world. Like let's hear some of your strategies.
Yeah. So here at Hire Devs we have a pretty efficient system at this point. So the first thing is really creating that design library and then building it to spec. So having that accessibility, having that security, having the component testing as well, and making sure that all the shareholders are on board, because more than likely there are going to be some changes that they do want to go ahead and make while we're already here. So at that point, we go ahead and look into what the AEM was targeting for components, whether it was a carousel, whether it was a grid, and then we go ahead and link those to the new design library components. And then from there, it's really as simple as running a script. So we check for a few, or let's say around a dozen different links, a dozen different web pages. We ensure that those are up to spec. And like Scott said, we do a mirroring process, which is really great to go ahead and have and do the visual testing and regression testing to ensure all those components are the same and you're still going to have that user experience that you would expect. And once those are on board, we go ahead and make the entire migration, and it takes around 45 minutes. So it's a very seamless process in order to get all these pages up to spec, and then also doing the visual regression, making sure that everything is still up to par. But yeah, it's very efficient, and we found things to go very smoothly.
So you do a similar kind of the as is or lift and shift or that's kind of what you're talking about here, where you basically do a mirror, but you still saw benefits. Like even though like for us in Sanity, we often kind of are afraid of that, because then you kind of bring a lot of the downsides of the kind of source platform along with you, as you then also get like there's but your experience with it, you still get a benefit as the editors.
Exactly, because we still do the design library and we still have these new fresh components that are up to spec. So we don't have those same accessibility issues that we had on the previous website.
And then people are in a position to do what like Scott and what you talk about, and you can then refactor and move, like then you can kind of do a more native implementation as time moves on. Now you're safe, you're on the other side, and you can evolve.
Well, it is actually very refactored in the way we go about things, because we still have, because we still have the header, we still have the footer, and we refactor those components. So everything that's a component is gets refactored and then gets upgraded.
Sorry, I meant the content model. Yeah, for sure. So you have a full refresh of the front end code, but then your content model is still kind of a mapping over. It's fair to say, if that's fair to say.
Correct. Yes.
In this instance, of course, you can then keep going.
Exactly.
Marcus, I know you have lots to say about this. Yeah.
This is interesting because I've had a slightly different experience. So for me, it's obviously you can migrate the content and you can migrate the structure. But for me, the shift when we started to explore the headless approach, where we started using Sanity and a static deployed site, was going much deeper. It went into the operating model as well, right? So AEM was so complex and so fragile that nobody in the brand side would dare to actually do a change there. So the brand manager would just write a brief to the agency would then create a ticket, and someone would pick up that ticket in an offshore space and make the change in AEM, and then send back the link for the preview, and then they get an okay. So just changing a typo
only 9 days
would take like at least days, right? So and when I introduced in my last role within Unilever, when I was the CTO for the hair department, and we launched the nexus.com site, the brand manager was like, oh, I can go in and do the change myself. So it was a total change of the operating model, and this really also triggered other teams to follow that route. And I think it's going back to what you were saying earlier. It's more autonomy for the different teams to do the work they need to do without having to rely too much on a central platform where everything is limited and everything. It's like a what do you call it? A spiral. Because it's so complex, you need to put more protection around it, and because the protection is there, you need more processes and more people. So it's kind of a really challenging situation to keep it simple and to keep it maintainable. So with regards to the migration, it was not a direct migration. So we created a new site which did not go onto AEM, but the change it meant for the developers, for the content authors, was tremendous.
That's a great kind of pivot to the people side and organization side of this. As a developer and agency person myself, one thing I'm really frustrated about is when I bring magical things to a company, new fantastic things that I and my team has built or integrated, there's always resistance, like always. So I would love to hear the story about like that migration, if you have stories about that, the reception, and how to succeed with that, if you have any tricks to share.
Sure, I think.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to. I promised to always say a name. I will say a name, Marcus.
I think I think I just said it already, right? So I think it was that moment of freedom of being able to impact the things the brands were trying to achieve, and that goes from very boring things like doing better QA, doing better accessibility, but and we touched on a lot of these topics, like the time to market for a new component. The Unilever.com team recently mentioned to me they had this new situation. The Ukraine war changed some of the product pipelines, and they had to make an announcement on the website. And they said this was just a matter of hours, maybe a day or two, instead of weeks, which it would have taken them in the old system. I think it's the agility it brings, but I think this is not obviously a thing between AEM and Sanity. I think there is a whole change of mindset, right? So moving from a page-oriented structure, and William mentioned this earlier, to a more semantic content structure. This is what the real change, in my view, is, and this is where Sanity also is difficult to compare to other headless CMS solutions. So it's a really different approach.
Amazing, William.
I think on one of the most recent cases that I can think of, we were dealing with an organization that was doing a design system with a headless CMS together, right? So, and the design system and a headless CMS together is the most powerful tool you can have, especially to delivering on branding and on-time experiences to customers, right? And in that sense, one of the arguments that we used to convince was literally this aspect that as your design system is evolving, your headless CMS is evolving as well, because you don't need to duplicate effort anymore. So a component is being built on the design system, it's already available to be used on your CMS side. And I think the other compelling moment was when we showed the multiple lively previews that you can make. So as you edit a page, you can see the results that live on your website, on your mobile app, on a totem that you might be using on an event. And I think that those two arguments, justifying the investment on a design system that can be effectively agile, and the fact that you can have like lively previews on all the channels you had, was enough to convince the stakeholders to move forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel often like that was my solution. Is I also would like have a little gift to the team, like let's say like overdo the previews a little bit, for example, they will be a little bit happy, feel recognized, and that helps the patients to then realize the rest of of course, amazing value, but it demands a little bit of an investment from a team to realize
to the previous point that Scott was making, in content altering and the experience of altering content is very important as well. And one of the ways that our client mentioned the evolution after everything was implemented is now the words were, now I feel that I am content altering, not content designing, having to drag a lot of widgets from nowhere that I have no connection with. I don't know what a row is or a column is, but I definitely know what a master hero is on my context, right? And the fact that they were able to be much more concerned with the experience, with the content that they were delivering, instead of the solution and having to drag technical aspects into their daily jobs, was a game changer for them.
Oh, that's amazing. That's one thing that I know both me and Marcus is working a lot with companies coming from that legacy world, helping them understand like the good implementation is the content drives the experience. Like you don't pick components; the components are picked by the content, which is a bit of a mind shift. But you also used previews, Scott, in your as a little bit of a sugar on the pill, isn't that true?
Yeah. I mean, we saw the benefit right away when we initially adopted AEM with the content implementers, the non-developer roles that were able to quickly preview and see their content inside of these components. So when we moved to a headless approach and we brought in, our design systems, right? One of the things that we were very active with is being able to enable that same type of preview capability with the design system. So upfront, being able to not only pull in, dynamically be able to pull in UI components when you're authoring a new page or a new site, but also being able to tie that into your content platform and see that content live in the lower environments. And that was a big plus for our content implementers, where they could actually see. And it also accelerated our use of like tools like Visual QA, where we could actually run, these automated tests as part of our lower environment builds, where we could execute and see how these different things rendered in different viewports, right? So there was a lot of engineering pluses with it as well. But yeah, I guess back to your. Go ahead. You got to follow up.
No. If you wrap up your answer, sorry.
Yeah, I guess back to your larger point about organization and roles. It's a mindset that spans all the roles. Like whether you're in engineering or you're a designer, right? There's a new focus. Content used to be an afterthought, right? We would add content to our pages after we design them, and now we've even redefined what is content, right? It's no longer just static images; it's also copy. It could be a voice snippet, it could be a recommendation, it could be a number of different things. So you have to plan for those things up front. So getting that shift left in that thinking about your content as structured data means when you start designing, you're doing your domain designing, now you have to include content in those discussions and those plannings. And I think that's very important, right? Because that's going to drive how we shape and manipulate and think about content. And along with it, those roles are evolving. And yes, there is some resistance to change, right? Not just change, but it's scary to, I think, a lot of folks that maybe have when they think about their roles and their current job and how they're working with content, it's changing, and there's a lot more automation. So there's a fear of the unknown there, that what's being introduced is going to maybe replace their roles. And in fact, it's the opposite. It's just changing how they work with content. Now they can work with it real time. There's not as much manual intervention with content.
Yeah, exactly. Sure, it's just lets people get more stuff done, and you always need more stuff done. It's not that like we have enough stuff done in the company, right?
Right.
So let's wrap up with like a short round of let's call it like a surprises. Like one thing is the pain points, the things we wanted, but how about like the things you didn't know about the first time you kind of started exploring moving into Sanity? Can you share any kind of surprising benefits that was not obvious?
For me, if I can get started, was the capabilities to customize the editing experience and the editor. I think that's unbelievable, amazing. And it's one of the features that not only help us on the development side, the developers to have a better experience, but also help us to even integrate better, easy the training sometimes, because we can implement features that before would be kind of a manual work for accountant author to execute on the editor. I think that was one of the biggest surprises I had, and one of the main motivators that we have Sanity as our preferred vendor for headless CMS.
Amazing. Dante, you nodded your head here.
Yeah, that was a good one, William. You got me beat on that. But just the amount of integrations that you can add into it that improves the whole process for any kind of user that you have. If it's a manager, if it's an admin that wants to edit content, or if a manager wants to approve or deny requests, and even requests that it doesn't have anything to do with the design. It can be as simple as a voting platform, allowing your users to vote, and then allowing these managers to go ahead and add on to these votes, or to add on to submissions, or there's a lot of things that you can do with it, or even the dashboard that Sanity comes with and allows you to see your content immediately without having to go through all these buttons and go through analytics or go this or that. But the efficiency that we've seen, the increase has been phenomenal.
Amazing. So we have very short time now, 30 seconds. Marcus or Scott, do you have any nuggets to share?
I mean, I'm surprised that people don't utilize these things more, but this is linked to my role. So I can still see a lot of customers from Sanity still thinking in the page structures and still thinking in page building. And, part of my team and myself are trying to educate people to really think about structured content and to leverage Sanity even
those
better.
benefits.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Scott.
Exactly. Final word, Scott.
Yeah, same here in the same context of William. Just the ability, the ability to take the studio and customize it to your use cases and be able to plug into your own in-house proprietary solutions and external third party. That's such a powerful tool, and then you get all the other flexibility of being able to own your schemas and manipulate them. I think combined is such a powerful platform. So it's a pretty amazing advancement.
I want to say one thing for everyone who now wonders what the cost of maintenance of the customizations are. It's very cheap, right? You can upgrade the studio still, and they usually work really well after we upgrade too. Okay, thank you everyone. It was great.